This is Fresno's Fabulous Past, a look at the pop culture environment of the city of Fresno from 1950 to 1990. And here is your host, Dale Mehl.
Thank you for returning to Fresno's Fabulous Past. This is Dale Mehl, and the music you are listening to is Hail to the Chief. I'm not only talking to the voice of Fresno, but the president of Fresno. He is the president and CEO of the Greater Fresno Chamber of Commerce. He is also the voice of the radio program on KMJ 580 AM and 105.9 FM. It's entitled Legends and Legacies. He is none other than Al Smith, who I consider the president of Fresno. And Al, is that a great introduction or what?
That's a great introduction, and I'm embarrassed. But, you can keep playing that music over and over again. It makes you feel good.
Tell the audience about your humble roots. You moved frequently as a youngster because your dad was a minister.
Yeah, I think growing up I counted it up that I have lived in about 26, 27 different cities. The interesting thing about that is that whenever you go to those cities, most of the time they'll say, well, this city is different. And my history is such that most of them are not. Two cities I found very interesting or different. It was New Orleans and Honolulu. But most cities are kind of the same, particularly in the South and Midwest. The values are very similar. As a kid growing up, as a preacher's kid, we moved every 2 years to a different congregation, usually always within the state of Louisiana. And then I got into broadcasting, and a little bit about that broadcasting business. Somebody offered you $5 more a week, and you were off to the next town. So we were a bunch of gypsies as youths as well as adults, and my poor family has followed me wherever I've taken them, and it's been a great, great life doing it.
Now, you have the great voice for doing Legends and Legacies and Murphy Bank, and your voice is very distinctive. It's hard for me to believe that in '57 you weren't immediately picked up at a radio station and on the air doing what you wanted to do.
Well, I was at college. I was a music major in college. I was always skirting around the showbiz arena. In my freshman year at college, I didn't have a lot of money to date the girls, and so I spent a lot of time hanging around with another student who was a nighttime disc jockey at a jazz station. And so many a night we'd just go play records all night long on the radio, and he'd do his shift, and that was my social life in college in my freshman year. So between summer, as back in those days, everybody had to get a summer job. I thought, wow, that'd be a great job. They actually pay you to play your favorite records? How crazy is that? So I started trying to do that as a summer job, and I kept knocking on radio station doors, and it was that same old, you have to have experience, and so how do you get experience? So walking back to my car after being told no about the third time, my car happened to be parked in front of a television station. And I figured I at least now know who to ask for when I go into a broadcast community. So I'll go ask for the program director and see if they have any jobs. And I walked in the TV station, this is 1957, and the program director came out and said, well, we're auditioning somebody right now, so come on back, I'll let you do it at the same time. So I went back there. I was 19 years of age, and I did my little audition. This is back in the days when they had booth announcers. They had a guy sort of sitting in a little booth with a microphone and a copybook and a monitor. Everything was live. They didn't have recording like we know today. Television,
Correct.
Video or audio.
No videotape.
Yeah, for sure, or even audio tape.
No audio tape.
So everything was done live, and I'd sit in that little booth for 20 hours a week, and I could push camera for 20 hours a week for $55 a week. And that was my entry into showbiz. And that was 57, and I went back to college and tried to carry a full load and keep a full-time job in television, and something had to give, so I dropped out of college and spent 47 wonderful years in broadcasting.
That's fantastic. But you went from broadcasting apparently into sales because you were the general manager of what's now known as Radio City at Palm and Shaw in Fresno. So how did that all come about, where you probably felt, well, hey, as far as announcing, it's not all that great to raise a family on. I want to get into sales, or how did that lead you to be the GM?
Yeah. I worked at some very small radio stations, and I remember, probably the biggest market I worked in was Dallas. The smallest market I worked in, this is all on the air stuff, was Odessa, Texas.
Oh.
The kind of hellhole of the world. And so when you go out to those little stations like that, many times you have to do everything. So I'd do the morning shift from 6 to 9, and then I'd get off the air, and I'd go out and pound on pavements, try to get advertisers So that kind of led me into the sales arena, not by design, but by necessity. And then as you were trying to crawl through the ranks of your industry, you all of a sudden got an opportunity to manage a sales department. So I managed the sales department for a while with some success. And then sooner or later, there was a lot of changes going on in the industry. And the general manager that I was working for left to go to another market, and they pushed me upstairs into GM. And sort of once you're in the GM slot, you're in the GM slot, and no matter where you go, whether it's a successful station or not, you are a general manager from that day forward.
Now, that was from, in Fresno at least, from what year to what year did you decide that it's time to leave, or you wanted to go on to bigger and better things like the Fresno Area Chamber of Commerce or the Greater Fresno Area Chamber of Commerce?
Well, I had not any design to do anything in this job. I didn't even think of doing. The idea of working for a not-for-profit was sort of a thing that I didn't think was appealing to me coming from the private sector. I was a private sector kind of guy, and the idea of running a not-for-profit organization, I always thought you just do that if you can't do the other. And somebody said, remember this, Al, nonprofits are a tax status, not a business plan. You run a nonprofit just like you run a for-profit business. Principles are a little different. The payoff to the shareholders is different because you're paying back to your members rather than to an investor. But the idea of running it is the same. So, when CBS bought that group of stations at Paul & Shaw, I did not like large corporations. We got into radio because we were creative, we were sort of fun-loving guys and gals. My wife used to say she was a widow, but not because of another woman or anything like that. We just never left the radio station. We were just having too much fun. And we were in showbiz, the girls, we'd have sock hops and you go out there. But it really got in your blood. And it was kind of a mom and pop industry. Then CBS came along and they bought these stations and corporate America took over. And all of a sudden, you can't be creative anymore. The dictate from New York is, we're CBS, we know it all. You just shut up and open the door and close the door and we'll tell you what to do. And there was no satisfaction for me in that. So after we'd sold the radio stations, I had a little piece of equity out of it, and I came out of it financially pretty well. I decided I'd retire in 2004, which I did. And I had no idea what I was going to do. I just thought my wife and I were going to just walk down the road and see where it takes us. And so about 3 months after I retired, a group of guys came to me and said, hey, we want to start a new bank in town. Would you want to be a part of that? And I thought, well, that'll kill some time. That'll be fun. Because I'd wake up every morning, how do I feel today? What do I do? I can cut the grass. I can do this. I'm not a golfer. I'm not a gardener. I didn't have a lot of hobbies. My work was my life. So we started the bank, and then about 6-7 months after that, they lost their CEO here at the chamber, and they came to me and said, hey, would you come babysit while we do the old nationwide search, as it always is? That'll kill a few hours. Sure, I'll do that. How long will it be? I said, well, 4 months. So that was in September of 2005, and this is October of 2015, and so you know what happens to interim jobs.
And we'll stop here with part 1 of my interview with Al Smith at the Greater Fresno Chamber of Commerce. On part 2, Al Smith will talk about the state of the city. He MCs that meeting with Mayor Ashley Swearingen. Stay tuned for part 2 of Al Smith, the president of Fresno, in my opinion. This is Dale Mehl for Fresno's Fabulous Past.